fate of the negotiations, the interests of the Federation, and the prospect for peace may very well depend on it.
Welcome to IGN First for March 2022. Our game we're covering all month long is Star Trek Resurgence, the new narrative adventure from some ex-Telltale developers here. I've got a couple of them. We've got Dan, our lead writer, and then Kent as well. Dan, thanks for joining me. I see you're wearing your Star Trek fandom right on your wall behind you already.
Oh, absolutely. And this isn't all of it either. This is just what you can capture with the camera. I've got pieces everywhere. It's nice to have a little bit of inspiration staring you in the face as you try to tackle a project like this. It's so big and so important to us.
I love it. I love it. Kent, now, Dan's setting a high bar here. We got to get some Trek posters for your wall going on back.
I guess I could say I'm bringing the Telltale legacy. Then I've got my Disco Broccoli shirt, which is a Walking Dead final season, a bit of memorabilia.
Nice.
But, yeah,
yes.
I've become immersed in Star Trek, but not in the physical merchandising side of it yet, perhaps.
Yes, not yet. Yet being the key
yes,
word.
Not yet.
No, you two are
a lot of it with my eyeballs.
Love it. Well, real quick, I guess before I get started talking about Resurgence, I got to know, especially with Dan's posters on the wall. So I'll go to each of you here. Dan, I'll start with you. Favorite Star Trek movie so far?
This is going to be slightly controversial, but I have a deep reserve of love for the motion picture, the very first one.
Nice.
I know a lot of people call it the motionless picture, but it is, it brought Star Trek back from the dead in a lot of ways, and kicked off, another 40-something years of great entertainment.
An alien object of unbelievable destructive power is less than 3 days away from this planet.
I think it looks great. It sounds great. It's the music that when you think of the Next Generation, you're really thinking about Star Trek: The Motion Picture.
Love that. Ken, how about you?
I will go with slightly more modern. I'll go with First Contact, largely because it was the first Star Trek movie I ever saw. But it has all the big things that people love about TNG, which is one of the most popular series. But with that, that cinema budget, that big screen execution, the Borg are great. Worf saying "assimilate this" and then shooting a laser and exploding a satellite, fantastic. I think it's really great.
I'm with you, Kent. I'm a First Contact guy all the way. I think it's my favorite. Yeah, I always love the Next Generation crew. That's my favorite of the Trek series thus far. Mm-hmm. And we're going to talk actually about that. It does tie into your game a little bit. We'll get to that in a second. But I want to start with both of you here. I don't know if maybe Kent will go to you first. I'm curious, how did the studio come together in the wake of Telltale's demise? Obviously, it was very public, very sad what happened with Telltale and the management there and the fate of the studio. But a lot of you have reformed here, and you're right back at it, still making narrative adventure games, which as an adventure game fan, I'm thrilled about. So I'm kind of curious if you can talk a little bit about the studio's origin.
Yeah, sure. I'll hand over to Dan a little bit after I set up. So yeah, after Telltale, almost everyone involved kind of went their separate ways. People worked on other games, worked with other studios. And when I personally, when I heard this was happening, the guys at Dramatic Labs reached out to me and asked if I wanted to be cinematic director for this. And I was over the moon. I loved the stuff we were doing at Telltale. It felt very unique. It felt like there were still even after it shut down, there are not a lot of games like this. So it felt really special to be a part of it again. And I'll defer to Dan, who was there at the founding of it a little earlier than me.
Yeah, so I think that the story of Dramatic Labs can't be separated from the story of Star Trek Resurgence, because at every stage, this team has been put together to make Star Trek Resurgence. So as the production has moved on and grown, we've been bringing more and more people in. There was a sort of core group of members at the very beginning who, we had this opportunity and we thought this is the right time to get the band back together, because we'd kept in touch. We'd worked together on some things in between. But this was, you can't say no to Star Trek. So we were very happy to have this opportunity.
Well, on that note, I would imagine just securing the Star Trek license in and of itself is a pretty big accomplishment, particularly for a startup studio. Now, granted, you've all had a very decorated resumes, but still, can you talk, Dan, a little bit about how that deal came to be and maybe what I know you're a distributed studio. You don't have a centralized office, but was there like a Zoom party to celebrate locking in Star Trek? Because that's very cool.
There wasn't a party to kick it off. I think we knew from the start we had a lot of work ahead of us, and we just dove right in to developing the ideas that we wanted to bring to this game. In terms of how it came together, I think you kind of said it, which is that it's a new company, but it's there's a lot of experience, and we had a track record working with some of the biggest IP. You talk about Game of Thrones, you talk about The Walking Dead. I'm getting ready to go see Batman this weekend, and we've worked on all of those, and I think that gave Paramount the confidence that we would treat their franchise with care. And a big part of that is that we care a lot about it. We're fans of the franchise. This is not for show. This is that's for me. These posters behind me, and so we knew we knew how to adapt something like this to our type of game. And it's a great fit because Star Trek is all about the decisions that you make and the people that you work, you travel through the stars with. And that's kind of our bread and butter. And so I think it was number one, it was just the experience and the confidence that we could bring to it that got this project off the ground.
Now, as you guys are trying to get the game off the ground, get the studio off the ground, there's got to be like a wish list of games in addition to Star Trek, right? Were there some other IPs on a whiteboard somewhere?
Well, I'll take this one, Kent, because I was there a little bit before you. But the list I will refer you to is the bucket list, and Star Trek is a bucket list IP. So there wasn't anything that stood above the rest the way that Star Trek does and has. I think personally, I've got a list of franchises that I'd love to work in, but sometimes they're not going to work for this kind of game. You might like something and say this is great, it's a great adventure, or it's a great ride, but it's not going to be something that you can plop a player in and they can navigate in this type of storytelling. Whether it's having plans that you have to hide from the player, or storylines that don't give you that kind of hook to make decisions. Sometimes a wild ride is great for a movie, but it's not great for a interactive narrative experience.
Ken, I'll throw this one your way. I mean, Paramount seems to have really loosened up the reins on Star Trek in recent years, allowing things like Lower Decks to happen, which I actually just got into recently and have been enjoying the heck out of that. Are you guys having to build up a trust with them? Obviously, you came in, as Dan was saying, with the track record at Telltale and having worked on big IPs, but I'm sort of curious of how the relationship has grown since you started work on the game a couple of years ago, and also, like, are there things that you've found with Paramount that are just like off limits with Star Trek, or like dream characters that they're like, maybe not, like, anything like that? I'm just sort of curious if there are any sort of inside stories along those lines throughout the development of this game.
I will say something that's very nice about the Star Trek IP, which I think is proven out by the fact that you're mentioning all these new shows are coming out and all these different angles and ways to go at it, is that it's such a rich universe and such an excellent setting for almost any kind of story. Like it's usually going to involve Starfleets, but even not always. So you can kind of tell whatever story you want in this universe as long as you're sort of on the tone and themes of Star Trek. So really, outside of the story being good, I don't think we run into a lot of particular restrictions. Paramount's been a fantastic partner. And I'm sure, Dan, that their core members coming at them right away with the passion for the brands was persuasive, seeing as we are where we are now. But I think they just want to tell great stories, in the Star Trek universe, and they're willing to, support a lot of different things to that end.
Yeah, and I'll just jump in and say that when we started out, we did come with a couple of sort of different angles, but this was really the story that we wanted to tell and that we wanted to push forward. So most of the things that we wanted to do that didn't end up in the game, it just comes down to, like, anything you write or any game you make, there are going to be ideas that are cool kind of in isolation, but then they maybe don't fit into the game, or you just don't have the space for it. It'll take away from the overall experience. So I think we mainly self-censored more than anything.
There've definitely been good Star Trek games over the years. I mean, Star Trek Online still out there too, but it does seem like to me, as somebody who is a Star Trek fan, that there haven't been any, let's call them AAA caliber, like, the level of what you guys are up to, like major console PC release. I feel like there haven't been many, if any, of those in a while. Why do you guys think that is? I'll go Dan's way first on this.
I couldn't tell you. I think that, it's amazing that Star Trek Online has been going strong for about 10 years. So maybe I reject the premise of the question, but for me, the number one thing is that there hasn't been a game like ours that mixes the cinematic and we have kind of all of the elements that you want from Star Trek: phasers, tricording to see things that are hidden, flying a shuttle, and there was space for us within the various Star Trek games to carve our own little area to dominate.
Well, Kent, how about, I'll go to you here. What are some of your favorite Star Trek games over the years? Because as we said, there definitely have been some really cool ones.
I have a bit of an affection for the old TNG point-and-click adventure game, where you can choose different crew members to go on the little away missions.
The object has accelerated to warp speed.
That's probably the one that I think of the most fondly, because as you said, like, weirdly, the kind of game we're making is the kind of game I like to play. And as you said, Star Trek has been adapted into many other genres. There are first-person shooters, there are some tactic games, there's stuff like MMOs, like Star Trek Online. But outside some of the movie stuff a little while ago, there hasn't been that many story-focused Star Trek games where it's about being a character in a plot and like recreating the feeling you get from the movies, which is kind of and the stories, which is kind of the core appeal of Star Trek as a franchise to me. So I'm excited that we're making something that's more like the franchise as a core, as opposed to the franchise being used as scenery.
Dan, how about you? Any favorites of the Star Trek games from over the years?
For me, we're drawing more from the film and TV to inspire us in this game. But I have to pay some respects to Star Trek, the 25th anniversary game, and Star Trek Judgment Rights for bringing together the entire original cast for their final release. I think that's pretty awesome.
Says the man whose favorite film is the first one. Well said. I like
that. Well, I guess I'm... the Stones always play the hits, right?
Absolutely. Well, I said TNG's my favorite, and your game, Star Trek Resurgence, am I correct here in observing from the uniforms alone in the trailer that you are set seemingly on or around the last time we saw the Next Generation crew in Nemesis?
You're absolutely correct. It takes place in the year after Nemesis, which gives us a lot of space before the Romulan supernova event that we see in the 2009 reboot movie and in Star Trek Picard. And it's, the motion picture is my favorite movie, but TNG is where, I sort of cut my teeth on Star Trek. I was watching it, on TV. It was my first appointment viewing on Saturday nights. So TNG is definitely sort of my crew when you talk about what classic Trek is to you. But I think that's sort of, not to nerd out too much, but the connections between the motion picture and TNG plays a role in why I love the motion picture so much.
Oh, well, we're here to nerd out. That's what we do.
All right, I like it.
IGN, so don't worry about that. You're among friends. Kent, what lessons have been learned from the Telltale days that are applied here now? I know this game, Star Trek Resurgence, not episodic, but that's not necessarily because that format didn't work at Telltale. So I'm just kind of curious if you can speak to some things that, having had no choice but to reflect back because Telltale came to an end for all of you, that some lessons that you've learned or some things that you've, some wisdom that you've applied now as you guys are developing Resurgence.
Yeah, I mean, I think we made so many of the Telltale games over the years. I think a lot of what we're doing on Resurgence is attempting to sort of refine and sharpen the things that we got right in those games and use them to their best ability here. And outside of just doing the dialogue-based gameplay to like the finest level of presentation and role-playing that we can, we're also in this title exploring the more alternative kinds of gameplay, more exploration. As Dan briefly mentioned, we have phaser shooting, we have exploring and scanning with the tricorder, we have flying a shuttle. So we're trying to use a bit more of a robust tool set to tell our story and to allow the player to be immersed in it than we always did at Telltale, which was a little more rigid in the structure of a lot of the games.
On that note, how much of the ship are you going to be able to roam in this thing? Because I know there are some sections where you have a little freedom to wander about. Mm-hmm. So I'm curious how much of the ship is going to be there for the player.
You will get to see a lot of the ship. We've actually built a somewhat staggering amount of it. You will get to roam around as based on what's happening in the story at that moment. So you will get to see a lot of the ship. You'll get to explore it when it's relevant to the story. But we've built, shuttle bays and brigs and hallways and engineering and warp cores and outside on the hull and sick bays. Like we've built the bridge, of course. Like we've built tons and tons of locations on the ship. The story takes place all over them, and you'll get to see them in all their glory.
And other ships as well. So it's not just
that's true.
That you get to tool around.
Oh, I like that. It's sounding better all the time. Kent, let me go back to you before circling back to the next one with Dan, because this one I think is for you here. Telltale, when I think back on Telltale as a player and as someone in the media covering the Telltale games over the years, stories were always admired. The game engine, particularly in the later years, not so much. But here in Star Trek Resurgence, you guys are using Unreal. So I'm curious how has that working with that during development been for you guys? Because it's certainly it's a change for all of you.
Yeah, we absolutely are. We're very proud to be using the Unreal Engine on this product. It's a fantastic engine. I mean, it's the standard now for a reason. And as a result of it being the standard, there's a lot of things it can do right out of the box, things that we couldn't have dreamed of at the tool, at Telltale in our older system. And so it's given us a lot of freedom to both achieve a significantly higher level of visual fidelity than we ever did in any of the Telltale games, as also to allow those more freedom and gameplay opportunities and seamless loads and all kinds of just shiny new features, kind of really bringing this kind of game into the modern era. And having support from Epic and being able to hire people for the team that already know how to work in the Unreal Engine and make it do every trick it can has been a huge boon to the production, and we're absolutely jazzed about it.
I love hearing that. Dan, this one's absolutely up your alley. So you guys have Spock in this game, and in what I have been shown, he sounds just like Leonard Nimoy.
True enough.
I mean, it's uncanny. So I'm wondering if you can speak to the process and the revelation of finding such an absolutely fantastic voice actor for this key role.
Yeah, well, Leonard Nimoy and the character of Spock are just, you can't overstate how important they are to the franchise. Spock has appeared in multiple iterations of Trek, most recently in Star Trek Prodigy on Paramount Plus. And Leonard Nimoy, not only did he bring life to Spock, but he directed some of the feature films of the original cast. So we wanted to make sure that we paid the appropriate amount of respect in finding the right voice. But in addition, it's not just a cameo. Spock plays a very important role. So we had to have the flexibility to have him say lines that made sense in our story, and that we could bring him fully fleshed out into our world. And it's a great responsibility because for me, even before I knew Star Trek and I knew Leonard Nimoy as Spock, he was the voice introducing the Mugar Omni Theater at the Boston Museum of Science, which I would go to monthly growing up. And why'd they choose him? He grew up 3 blocks from there. So he has an indelible voice that is very hard for somebody else to mimic. And you need somebody who's not just a mimic and doesn't just sound like him, but somebody who can breathe life into the role as well.
They have never been observed on the orders of magnitude we have seen in recent weeks.
And I'll just say, as a writer as well, it's such a distinctive voice, both from the writing and the performance, that at times it felt less like writing lines for him and more like we were just in conversation. It was really a treat to work with Spock, and we hope that we've done him justice.
And Kevin, one of your studio founders, was telling me the story apparently you guys just got mountains, reams of auditions, and then this, the final one, your voice actor just completely stood out. Was it? Can you kind of speak to that? Having to sift through everything and having that aha moment.
It was a very Highlander moment. There can be only one, and I think we'll be revealing our actor that we use later. But he, knocked it out of the park. And then in conversation with him after, later about how he approaches it, he's very technical about his voice acting and how he brings, creates the sounds of somebody else. And it's, impressions are like a magic trick to me, where somebody can, kind of take everything you kind of this impression and gestalt of a person and encapsulate it and project it back to you. But again, we needed somebody who's a voice actor who could carry scenes in their own way.
Commander Ryder could ingratiate herself to certain parties behind the scenes.
Well, it's a tall order. Sounds like, from what I've already heard, sounds like you've found the exact right person. So looking forward to seeing more there. Although you mentioned, before I go to back to Kent for a final question, Dan, you did mention the word cameo. Are there, I'm sure you won't name any names if there are surprises, but can we expect any other cameos from any other maybe well-known members of Starfleet? Or
I think I can say absolutely. You will see more familiar faces.
Kent, let's bring it home here. Is the hope that once you guys reach the finish line on Resurgence, that this starts a franchise of sorts for you guys, that you make multiple Star Trek games? Or do you guys have that other whiteboard, that bucket list that you want to look to after this?
We're very focused on Resurgence right now and making sure it does well. So, we can only hope that we could make another game of some kind. We'll have to see how this one goes. But we have a really great crew and we love telling stories together. So optimistically, hopefully, but we have to finish. We got to bring Star Trek home first.
A very diplomatic answer. But
I learned from Spock. All the Spock scenes we've been doing.
You got a game to finish first here. Dan, Kent, thank you so much. The game is Star Trek Resurgence. We are covering it all month long on IGN as part of our IGN First. Think of it as a cover story, like the old school magazine days. Guys, thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having us on.
Thank you.
Jara, I need you to do the right thing.